Well, welcome back to another episode of the Create the Ripple podcast. I'm your host, Candice Smiley, and today my guest is another one of my encore guests, which I love. You guys all know that I love the encore guests. Encore guests are when we decide to pick up the conversation basically where we left off. And I mean, you guys know who my lovely guest is. I'm going to let her do her introduction again. For those of you who maybe are new to the podcast, we've had a ton of new subscribers. Welcome to all of you. But I want her to share her story because it's significant. And last time we had great conversations regarding Post-it notes. We had conversations about being in the right place at the right time and how needing a bathroom, renting a bathroom, you have to remind me of the story, set her up for success. And I really love that because if I think about my own life, there are tons of different moments where I needed something, I went looking for it, I trusted the right place, be in the right place at the right time. And here we are. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over to my lovely guest, let her introduce herself to you, share her story, and then I've got some questions for her so we can catch up to where she is today.
Well, thank you so much for having me back, Candice, because we have such good conversations. So it's fun that we get to kind of let people be a fly on the wall as we go down whatever rabbit hole universe wants us to take today. I'm Brenda Jones. I'm the owner of Belief Company. Welcome to my beautiful new office, which goes with the story. Belief Company is all about helping you get rid of those things like overwhelm and stress and self-sabotage and all of that stuff that tends to hold us back. Because when you really believe in yourself, whatever it is you believe, as cheesy as it is, you can achieve, whether that is in the direction you want to go, or sometimes we have beliefs that take us in the direction we don't want to go. And so it's been a very interesting journey. So the last time we chatted, I think we were in office number 2. I think I had the window office at that point, but it was all about needing a bathroom. So people remember 2020. I think everybody remembers 2020 and the world stopped and shut down. So when our dance studio reopened, the kids got to go back, but the parents weren't allowed inside, which if you lived near the studio, no problem. I didn't. I was 45 minute drive without traffic. I live in Southern California, so without traffic is kind of laughable. So day 1 of the studio, I'll go sit at a restaurant. It kind of worked, but I didn't get work done. And then that afternoon, they reclosed restaurants. So day 2, I'll go shopping. And I made the mistake of, I will use Costco when I need to use the restroom. That was a $500 bathroom break, to which I was like, well, this isn't going to work. And went, well, what am I going to do? I need a bathroom. How do you rent a bathroom? I guess you rent an office. And so even though I had really been that I don't need an office, I really promote that the work I do, I can do anywhere, and I do anywhere. I rented an office solely to have a bathroom. Well, universe went, oh, look at you renting an office and being all big girl. And then all of a sudden business exploded. And at that point, when I first rented, it was a friend of mine and myself, and we rented this tiny little interior office. Within the same month, expanded to he rented the office next door. Within a few months, we were on the other side of the building in larger window offices. Well, that dance studio just moved. And so when they moved a little bit closer to home, but still trafficky and still kind of a waste of time to drive back and forth. A good half hour, still 40 minutes each way, depending on time of day. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at the building that they were renting. And I found the property manager and I reached out, and she had a tiny little closet of an office available. And I said, I will take whatever it is to be on property. Mm-hmm. And before I even signed the lease on that space, she said, hey, one of our larger mini suites with a window just opened up. Do you want it? And it's a little bit more than I had been spending, but I have double the size. So behind me now, you can see that I actually have room on my couch. I'm not like the wall right behind me and everything there. And then my kids homeschool. And so we can actually come in, I can be in the office, get stuff done in the morning. They now have their homeschool stations. And then when it's time for them to go to dance, I don't have to stop what I'm doing and drive the 10 minutes that it was before. They go out this door, they walk down the hall, they walk to the other side of the lobby and into the dance studio. So it's really been a trusting in the process, trusting in the universe to put exactly what I needed. Because when I saw the little closet office, I was like, well, I guess I'll make this work. And I guess half my furniture will go home because it's not going to fit. And I don't know how I'm going to teach from here. And then this beautiful space opened up. So here we are. And it really did start with renting a bathroom last year.
Well, and the thing I love about this story is, how often does way lead on to way, right? That was sort of the phrase I grew up with, right? You get started. I've heard the phrase God can't steer a non-moving car. And for so many people, I think getting the car moving is sometimes the biggest piece, right? We don't know what the next step is. We don't know what that means. But nature really does abhor a void. And rushes in to fill the void. And that's really been interesting. One of my favorite quotes is, to make space in your life for the inevitable arrival of what you want. I believe Danielle LaPorte said it first. And what I just love that because I often think about that, right? We have gotten into the world of busy, right? I know I myself was definitely part of the cult of being busy. Was I productive all the time? Sometimes, not always. Half the time I was just happy to be busy. And a large part of that stemmed from the fact that I didn't have very good boundaries. I didn't realize that boundaries could be a really positive thing that needed to be set, to save my time, my effort, my energy, the non-renewable resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that really shifted once my daughter was born. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, if I'm taking time away, not only does it cost me money to hire someone if I needed to be, more fully present in that conversation, but it also was time away from her. And I just found myself so unwilling to do that, yet still so called to my mission and my passion and my purposes, which of course have grown as I have grown. And I really hear that in your story, right? We started in one place and then fast forward and now we're doing this. And really, I think, at least for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, I'd love sort of your feedback on that, but when I started on my journey, whether it was as an entrepreneur or into a personal development, I could not have looked this far ahead and seen the life that I'm legitimately living right now. Is it always sunshine, lollipops, and roses? Of course not. But I don't think I even had a clear plan, but I knew I was like, I want to kind of go there. And so I kind of love to hear that because I know you do a lot of the NLP work. I want to talk more about the belief code because I really am passionate about what you do. And I know that a large part of that comes from, who you are and your story of getting there.
Oh man, if you would have told me this is where I was going to be, I would have probably laughed.
Right?
I would have laughed. And not only did I not know I was going to be here, I was adamant that this wasn't where I was going. So when I fell into NLP because I fell into network marketing. I was retired when I had my daughter, my older daughter, who's now 13 and a half, which I don't know how that happened because I definitely haven't aged over a decade. Yes. But I retired when I was pregnant with her. I walked away from an autism career and I knew that there was no way I could go back into that and have her because all I was going to do was pay a nanny to raise her while I worked with everybody else's kids. And while I loved what I did, I really wanted to have kids and I loved the baby phase the most. And so it didn't make sense to ask anybody to watch her during the 2 years that are my favorite. Because I never said I wanted teenagers. I never said I wanted kids. I always said I wanted babies. And so to miss that didn't make sense. And I do love the baby phase, but now I'm at the phase of you have the babies, I will take care of them, and then I will give them back at the end of the day. Because I have learned that sleep is a thing. But when I had some stuff happen, I fell into network marketing. I went to a business opportunity meeting just to reconnect with a friend who was in town for it, saying adamantly I was not coming home with a business. And if you know anything about telling the mind not, well, so I came home with a business and then fell into networking, which brought me into meeting the person who introduced me to NLP and personal development. I remember when I was in school in UC San Diego, I remember the Anthony Robbins company. He had his offices in La Jolla, but I never tapped into the Tony Robbins stuff. I never tapped into all of that back in the early 90s. I didn't find it till 2012 when I was pregnant with kiddo number 2 was when I found NLP. And as I went through that, after that first weekend course, I was given an option. He was doing his last run of certifications, or he had a personal development phase, which was kind of like the mini version. Instead of a 7-day practitioner training, it was a 4-day like practitioner light where you learned how to use everything for self. And I was absolutely not going back to work. I was retired. So I'll take the personal development track. only to find out that I loved it so much and it changed my life so much that everybody said, what are you doing? And can you do it with me? And then I went back into certification and I opened up the same manual I had just done for personal development because I was so adamant this wasn't where I was going to be. Mm-hmm. And it comes back to that I'm not going to go back into business. I'm not going to be a trainer. I'm not going to be a teacher. From the time I was little, I'm not going to be a teacher. So what did I do? I have my master's in early childhood special education. So, because I was not going to be the teacher. And it kind of just shows me that universe put me here to teach, to lead. And all it's done is really shift who I teach and how I teach and what I teach on. Yet so much of what I do now with NLP could have been useful in understanding my kiddos with autism and special needs, could have been useful with all of those families. And then so much of what I learned in autism special needs, actually, I still apply today because it doesn't just apply in autism and in special needs. It actually applies to all of us. And so I've kind of combined those two worlds to take everything that I knew about behavioral psychology and how behavior works with now everything that I know about the subconscious mind, and then adding in actual brain health science to what we do in partnering with Dr. Amen and the Amen clinics as well. So it's been this really cool synergy of all of that, but I had no clue.
Yeah. And I love that. And, you know, a lot of the people who listen to my podcast are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are moms. It's sort of a broad range, but I know that for a lot of us, it was the plot twist in our life that typically brought us to where we are. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately because I've made a shift in my own little mind and heart that I am ready to start, you know, speaking and sharing some of the things that I've, you know, largely kept and just sort of worked on for a number of years. And as I've been shifting that, it's been a really interesting conversation as I've been writing to people, and they're like, well, I'm trying to figure out who I am now in this phase. And I think I've had a few, you know, morphs of, well, now I know this and now I'm doing this. Or and I love that your story is, I really didn't plan on ending up here. And that's something I really want to drive home for the listener. Like, if you're in a spot right now where you're like, I never planned to be here, start looking for the silver lining, or, you know, the window that is clearly open, or the opportunity that is packed into that gift. Because I think the plot twists in my life, you know, the deer in the headlights, wow, did not see that coming, have ended up being the biggest blessings for me. So.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. When I said I fell into network marketing, the thing that triggered that off was our kids were a year old. They had just turned 1. And a friend of mine in the play group, her son is a New Year's Eve baby. Mine's a New Year's Day baby. And it was the weekend after their birthday parties. They had just turned 1. And my friend's husband passed away in a plane crash. And it was it was him and his father. So she lost her husband and her father-in-law, and our kids were 1, and she was also pregnant and due in a couple months. And it was his service that kind of triggered me into falling into that network marketing company. When I went home and I realized I wasn't in any pictures with my daughter. It was that whole, here was the service, here are all these beautiful photos. If something were to happen to me, what would my daughter have left of me? Well, what we had were tens of thousands of pictures of her, and I was not in any of them. I think I was in a couple, and I hated them. And so that's how I fell into network marketing. You know, how did I meet my husband? I lost my best friend. He died in a car crash. But that led me to being at the event where I met my husband. I met him on Valentine's Day, and we were engaged 3 weeks later. Aww. So my life is a series of things that other people would call tragedy, things that other people would call bad. And yet one of the things I teach is nothing bad ever happens in my life. And it's not because life is, you know, full of sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. It's because just like you said, I don't look at any of those as bad. There's always a purpose. There was something that was happening in that moment that was for me. And if I stop looking at it as being done to me, and I look for that silver lining, I look for that thing that I was supposed to learn, because really that's why I chose to come to Earth School, was to learn these things. We choose Earth School to have emotion because this is where we do that. Yeah. And if I accept that I chose to come here to have these experiences, then I also chose to come here to learn from these experiences, and then also to share my experiences. And so sometimes I'll share parts of my story. I'm like, I don't know why I'm telling this right now. And then someone will come up to me on a break or after a class and go, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I was like, oh, you're why I told that today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I really learned the way I teach my trainers and my speakers is, yes, I have notes. I always have notes. I am a stickler for making sure I teach you everything I said I was going to teach you. But the notes are there so that I can get out of them. Because if I teach from only my notes, that's my agenda. Mm-hmm. And I'm not ever here to serve my agenda. I'm here to serve that agenda. Mm-hmm. And that only happens when I step out. So kind of like our call today where you were like, do we have anything? I was like, no, let's see where it goes.
Well, I have to ask, especially because right now, I got some serious pregnancy brain going on. So, but I really enjoy showing up on these conversations, and most of my listeners know that I just show up and I try not to, dive too much or think too much or even get to know the guest too much before we turn the camera on, because I think in today's day and age where everything is so perfect and filtered and everything else, that I crave reality. I crave real conversations. I love to listen to them, right? Where I realize, wow, that person was legitimately telling the truth right there. And I think we know that. I've been thinking a lot about something that came up for me when you were sharing parts of your story. Not only, did we choose this human experience to learn things, right? And, choose, I think, I did some reading by Myss, is that the one?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I think her book is sitting here somewhere.
Sacred Contracts. Anyway,
yep.
Amazing.
Back there.
To be honest, it's one of the ones I've not made it all the way through yet. It's one of the ones I pick up, I read a section, and then literally spend months thinking about that, pondering, the truth of that for me. And the last part that I read talked about, because I'm still locked in a divorce, which has been challenging for me. And I had a realization that this person's soul must love mine very, very much because of the lessons, the size, the scope, the depth, the pain that I've experienced, allowed myself to experience from those lessons. And that shift was so profound for me. I've literally not picked up the book for months. I've been thinking about it. It was easy to think about, for somebody that I love, right? To be like, yes, this person come into my life and they must love me very much because they're helping me. And then the flip side, right, is that little quiet voice in your head goes, if that person is, then so is this person. And what an interesting shift that is. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why people don't always want to jump into personal development, is because you end up, wanting to blame somebody else for your experiences, your hurts, your pains. I'm here because, rather than the reality, which is, wow, this person, which I experienced so much love, or love from, actually loves me that much. How crazy is that? And very few people I could share that with, but I feel like you would understand that. And I mean, that's one of the things I think that people could embrace when they, go along with something like an NLP course or something like that, the impact of those lessons.
When you look at it in terms of those sacred contracts, we have those people who sign the easy contract to come here and be loving with us. But people did choose to take the contract where they had to do that hard thing. And how much did they love us to take that contract, to be willing to be that character, that persona in our lives so that we could learn the thing we were asking for help learning. And then sometimes contracts end and sometimes contracts change. And sometimes you end up in a contract and you're like, I don't think this is an original contract. And then you have to look back at it and go, I think we jumped a timeline here and I don't remember signing this contract.
Yes.
But all of that, like the friend that comes into your life and then the friend that leaves your life, the person whom you love, the person who then is that person you fall out of love with, right? And vice versa, because you equally signed a contract to play your part for whatever it is they're learning in the process. And so it's a really cool thing when you think about it in terms of that. And we do a lot of that, the very beginning of any NLP training we do is about being at cause, not being responsible for things that happened. And the way I illustrate it is I was in a car accident when my little had almost 1 year old. So they were like almost 1 and like almost 5. And we were at a dead stop. The light was green, but the traffic hadn't gone anywhere because the next light was stopped. So obviously I can't go anywhere. And the kid that was barreling down the hill behind me on his phone saw the green light, not the stop traffic, and hit us at full speed, didn't even touch his brakes. Am I responsible for the accident? Well, the insurance company will absolutely tell you no. However, I can go back and see where I was at cause. I made a choice that put me there because 2 miles up the road, and it's funny because my office is actually here now. So that Target that I was sitting in the parking lot is literally on the next block. And I remember sitting in that parking lot going, I should turn right and go home. And I overrode it and said, no, I'm going to turn left and run this errand that I don't really need to run. And it was just down this hill about 3 lights that our car was rear-ended. And did I cause the accident? No, but can I find the piece that I played to be in that position? Because your life is the sum of the choices that you've made and the choices that you've chosen not to make. Because so many people will go, it's the decision I made or I didn't. But how many times do we actually make a decision to not decide? And that impacts us as well. I don't want to make the decision. It's really, really hard. I'm just going to do nothing. Yeah. Well, nothing also has consequences that move through. And we are where we are as a sum of everything that's happened. And we've chosen and made decisions. Yes, other people have been players. And we still get to look back and find that silver lining that you talked about. I can look back on my past and I can wag my finger at all the people that did me wrong. Or I can look back on my past. And that doesn't help me today. And that doesn't help me moving forward. And that impacts everybody around me. Or I can choose to stop wagging my finger and go, okay, yeah, this person did some really icky things. And at the same time, what can I learn from that? I can't go back and change it, but I can change who I am right now and my response right now so that it doesn't continue to impact me moving forward. Yeah. And that's where 2 people can have the same thing happen. And one, it's the reason for their downfall, and one, it's their reason for their rise. It's just in how they choose to tell the story of that event.
And isn't that a powerful place to be? I mean, I think we often underestimate the power of choice, right? Like, I'm going to choose this today. And I think for some people, it can feel like things are being forced on us. And I mean, the world's a very crazy place right now. There's a lot of things that are very much out of our control, some things that feel out of our control, and some things that are legitimately out of our control. And I know that for a lot of us, we're having to choose, every day how we're going to respond to this or this new change or this new adjustment. And that's a powerful place to be in, but it does require, like you said, a radical sense of responsibility. Right. I am, 100%, involved in this. And also some radical acceptance. That was a piece that came from me last year. I think after our conversation, somebody brought it up and said, you know what, it's not about necessarily forgiveness, because forgiveness creates that hierarchy, right? I forgive you. And it made sense because I've often felt like when people say, well, yes, I forgive you, I feel like I didn't ask for your forgiveness, right? I don't feel like I need forgiveness, but this idea about acceptance, radical acceptance, it is what it is, right? And I was just like, wow. So that's another one of these concepts I've been thinking about recently. The impact of just looking at a situation for what it is. And I think part of that comes from my first birth experience. I'm close to my second birth experience. So, that's kind of becoming forefront. It's rather entertaining to observe myself thinking about these things. And I find myself thinking, well, I can accept this that didn't go well the last time. I can also accept this moving forward. And it's a really interesting concept. And I'm sure you guys touch on, things like acceptance in your NLP when you guys are going through that.
Yeah. It's funny you said that it is what it is. During World War II, my family was in the internment camps, and there was a phrase in the camp, "Shikatanai." It is what it is. They couldn't change the fact that they were being put in these camps. What they could change was their response to it. And so they started things like theater troops. They started doing gardening with one another. They made the best of what it was. And I would say there's a lot going on right now that, yes, feels very out of our control. And what choice did I have in this? And I sometimes have to take myself back to, why did I choose to live now? Why did I choose to come to earth knowing that this was the thing? Why did I choose to have kids in this time frame? And there must be a reason why my soul chose to come to earth during this time, chose to bring life onto earth at this time. And so I'll start there. And then it also comes down to, I cannot change the things that are happening at the legal level, et cetera, but I can always look at my response to it. Mm-hmm. And those are the two places where I can stay not in control, because control has this semblance of that hierarchy again. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, staying very aware and consciously in control of my own response to things, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on that, you know, for whether, no matter what side you are on any situation, everybody is experiencing something that feels out of their control with everything that's going on. And that's whether it's political, medical, social, educational, like across the gamut. I think we can all gather and say everything feels a little unsure and out of our control, no matter where you are. And so where can we say, okay, I chose to come here. I chose to be on earth right now.
Why?
For what purpose? For what purpose am I here? And what am I supposed to be learning from this event? The learning of which will allow me to release this. But really getting back into the moment. Okay, I can't undo the fact that I did choose this. I can't undo a lot of things. But what can I do right now? Mm-hmm. I can gauge my response right now. Mm-hmm. I can gauge what I'm going to share, because our energy leaks. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not feeling it, then maybe I'm not going to jump on camera. If I'm not feeling it, maybe I'm not going to go to that social event and bring everybody down and leak that energy. I can be in charge of me and my response to things. And that's where I bring kind of that stuff back. And then I sit there going, for what purpose did I choose to come here now? Because there must be.
There must be. I think often, I mean, my background, of course, was in, I grew up, conservative Christian, and, I've loved some of the stories that have come out of that, rich history. One of which, right, is, for such a time as this. And I've thought about that a lot, especially when I literally saw the world like closing down. I remember feeling like now is an amazing time. I don't want to use a transformational, but that sort of leader who steps up and says, I don't have all the answers, but I know we're going to get from here to here because we have before, right? We've gone through as a society, as societies, as cultures, as women, right? There are certainly some times in history that were equally as dark or maybe even more so. And I've been thinking a lot about those too, right? Because I do believe I have an old soul, and I do believe that this is not the first time I've gone through, an element of crisis where the human suit was experiencing that level of, I don't know what's going on and why I'm here, right? But there's sort of that enduring that's, I think a lot of us are sort of waking up. And I have loved some of the memes, right? Where there's some people who are clearly just waking up, right? And they're like, it's not a good time. And then there's a few of us who are like, oh, okay, that's why I went through this and this and this. So I had some sort of a grounding and a base. And one of the most interesting things I have noticed is a lot of the people who had invested in personal development or had habits, yoga practices, had meditation practices, right? Had a deep abiding faith in whatever their faith was. They have weathered the storm entirely differently than people who were legitimately unprepared. And how much more so those of us who had already been choosing, high vibe foods to eat. We'd been choosing, to drink more water. We just, these little things that have literally become, wow, right? That literally raises my vibration. I mean, I enjoy things on a whole different level now than I did. And there have certainly been elements of the entire situation, right? I don't want to get into it, that have been challenging and been like, wow, I was going this way. We are definitely not going that way anymore. And elements that have been so magical. I was like, if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't do this. And it's an interesting space to be in, where you sort of feel this element of incredible gratitude and what's next? Why am I here? And sometimes in the same day, sometimes in the same hour, sometimes in the same minute. And right, I mean, the podcast was born from this, the baby I'm about to have, born from this. The situations literally changed. The plot twist that just changed life, which is crazy. Just crazy.
this office. Me having an office at all was born from this, because I was very adamant in not having an office. Right. But as soon as I had an office, universe was like, you can do so much more now that you have this space.
Yep.
And then going virtual, for what I do, there are so many. If you think back to 2 years ago, if someone were to tell you that all of these trainings were virtual, you'd be like, no, I'll wait till I can go in person. Yep. And now, we're the opposite. What do you mean in person? Do you have a virtual option? Because it's so much easier for me to do this. Like, I have an event that's coming up where they were supposed to be in Los Angeles, because Los Angeles has the rules that it does. It moved down to San Diego, but it's still local. Yep. But he added a virtual option. I'm like, wait, I don't even have to go to San Diego. I'm in, because I didn't want to have to deal with childcare and figuring that out, because the girls need to be here at the studio for dance. And now I can be here. I can drag them here. They can sleep on the carpet behind me till it's time to go to dance, because the training's really early in the morning. We homeschool. They are not morning people. Yeah. And neither am I. Yeah. And so, all of that was born out of this. I have been able to go to events since shutdown that I never would have been able to, because now I can attend from my phone, from my computer. And I've been able to teach and train and certify people who are going out and working with people, and now training and certifying people that I never would have been able to work with had it not been virtual. I did one training where I think I was the only person on the West Coast. We had a few people on the East Coast, a few people East Coast, Canada. We had 2 different time zones in Europe and Australia in one class. Those are all people that wouldn't necessarily have been able to fly into one place at the same time because of other things in life. And so that shift of taking my business virtual, now that virtual is so much more accepted than it used to be. And, relying back on that previous education of, I have a degree in modifying curriculum for accessibility. And that's what I looked at for going virtual. Do I think everybody can just do what they were doing in person, do it on a camera and have it be the same? No, I spent a good 6 weeks talking to a lot of people and then going back to, this is my specialty. Curriculum modification is what I do. And then modifying. And it's been really cool. And now we do hybrid events where some people come in live and some people are still on Zoom, and it's really awesome. But I was attending events like that before the world shut down, because I didn't want to fly to Canada to go to something. So I got to attend a Canada training from the couch. And the best thing was, my friend who lived 5 minutes down the road was attending the same event from his couch. So it's finding that silver lining. So many people really blossomed during this time because we took that time to go, oh my gosh. But then having that personal development background, we were able to pull ourselves out. We had a reserve we had a lot more reserve to keep us above water.
And I think access to resources. I'm homeschooling my daughter too. I had intended to do that anyway. But now certainly it's a lot more accepted, right down to, the question of socialization has really shifted. And I'm like, well, there was a time when dating online was taboo. You didn't do it. Nobody believed your relationship would last or be legitimate if that was how you met. And now it's normal. It's very normal. And I said, so right now my daughter's the only one in her online class, which is accredited international. And that just gives me a little bit of freedom to continue to work from home and have their resources, but there's not a kid from Canada there. So she's meeting all kinds of kids from all over the world in different time zones. Like, one of the kids is like, it's an entirely different continent. And it is absolutely incredible that she's having these experiences, and these are her friends. These are the people she's meeting for lunch. And I think, eventually the world will open again. Of course it will. It has to. And when it does, she's going to have international connections, and she's 6 years old. That is not an experience necessarily that she would have had before, that I'm just like, you're right. I have noticed not everybody's happy that some people blossomed and some people didn't. And I think it goes back to some of that choice again. I've run into a few of those, and I thought, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And that's been an interesting thing too, because I tend to be fairly passionate. I'm a get it done kind of a girl. And some of these recent shifts and changes have not been necessarily what I would have chosen. And there are some people that are ridiculously happy about those, and some that are not. And it's made me really sit back and think about all the things that I was so happy about. And I was like, I was totally missing the boat. It's been a really interesting mirror,
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
entire experience. Which, it just has given me tons of stuff to fill in a journal. But I love how you talked about that, that resource, because the ones that I have watched thrive were like legitimately prepared for something like this.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't know how or why, but they were. And a lot of us had a previous thing or things that had happened that had been catastrophic in one way or another. And that was certainly my experiences when it hit. I was like, oh, well, sucks. Like, this really sucks. But I had just come off of healing from, a relationship that I hadn't wanted to implode and it had, or, people who had, cancer diagnosis. And, it was really interesting to hear their stories. And like, I mean, how many books are out there now? How many people have taken their amazing courses online? How many people are, it's an amazing space. And I love that we're talking about it. I didn't think we'd go here today, but I'm really glad we are because, I know for me, when I go looking for that silver lining, it's amazing what's out there. It really is.
It's been really interesting to watch. Even with my kids, we always homeschooled. So we're on year 9 of homeschooling. We've homeschooled since kinder, and she's in the 8th grade. But there was still that panic when all of a sudden her extracurriculars closed, like dance closed.
Mm-hmm.
She's been in dance since she was 18 months old. She's been competing since she was 3.5. I was like, what do you mean dance is closed?
Yeah.
And then dance went online. This thing that, and people would have swore up and down that you could never teach dance online, and they thrived. My kids thrive dance online. I started running away from home daily to do a 5K every day just to get out, because I have 2 kids. So I had one kid in class upstairs in the loft, and that would echo through the house. But then I had another kid in the room with me with a different set of music. And it was like, gotta go. So I started walking every day. I was like, hey, look at how many 5Ks I could do. Because when I first started walking, going a lap around the block or around my park, which is a half a mile, used to be really hard. And I was like, here's 3.1 every single day because I don't want to be home. Oh, look, we're going to do 5 miles today because I just don't want to. Mm-hmm. And they really thrived in that. And watching the dance studio transition to online was really cool to watch. But there was that instant of, all of us that are in personal development, we still had the fear. We still had all that stuff. But like you said, the resources, we had the resources to be able to get out of it a lot faster. Because we already knew, okay, if I know, fear, what's the fear? And I have techniques for fear. But if it would have been me 10 years ago, before I learned all these things, I was not me 10 years ago. I was a very different version of me.
Not me 10 years ago. That's like totally the episode title. I was not me 10 years ago. Yeah, exactly.
The person I was prior to NLP still had a lot of baggage and had a lot of ish and had a lot of anger and had a lot of just not great coping mechanisms, not great anything. Had that version of me been who I was at the shutdown, it would have been very different. And then also to watch my kids. Like I said, I was pregnant with kid number 2 when I fell into NLP. So she doesn't know anything but living in NLP. And my other one was only 4.5. And so their whole lives have been shaped by NLP and hypnosis and mindset and being around all of these other amazing mindset people. So when the world shut down and their friends like all of a sudden got put on homeschool, which wasn't homeschool, it was crisis schooling. It's very different than those of us that homeschool look at it and go, that's not homeschool. And I don't know what it is, but it's not homeschool. And when her friends were going through all of that crazy, I noticed that my kids didn't. Not only did they not, they helped their friends through it. And they were able to unspin them as they were working themselves up, because my kids already had the higher reserve of how to control their emotion, how to bring themselves back down. My daughter, unbeknownst to me, jumped on YouTube and found meditation tracks because she was feeling a little anxious, which is very not like her. But she's also very independent on her own. Gee, I wonder who she got that from. Yeah. But instead of coming to me, there was a day I was walking by her bedroom at night. I was like, what is that noise? And I go in and she's listening to meditation tracks. And I'm like, okay, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Yeah. And then she started sharing that with her friends. But had I not had my journey, she wouldn't be looking for meditation tracks. So it is that extra resource, that extra resourcefulness, I think, that we had, that made it a little bit easier for some of us to go into this crazy shift. Not that it was easy for anybody. No. We just had an easier time of the hard.
An easier time of the hard. I love how we've woven some interesting conversations around this. And I mean, you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours. We had this sense last time we chatted, so I'm glad we get to have that again. But if as we're starting to wrap up our conversation, is there something you'd like to leave the listeners with? And I mean, certainly we're going to have all of the information to contact you in the comments or down below, so people can easily do that. Catch one of your next virtual trainings and stuff like that. But what would you love to leave the listeners with?
It's being on this side of personal development. It feels easy. But some people and some of the listeners, and it might be you listening right now, you're just starting. Maybe this is the first personal development, anything that you've done. So when we talk that it's easy, it's a journey to get to easy, right? Those first little bits aren't. But when you keep at it and you keep doing the work and you really allow yourself to stay in the moment and tap into what is going on for me right now, instead of living in the past and having the anger and the sadness and those things, or living in the future and having the anxiety. If you just bring yourself back down to, where am I right now? What am I actually experiencing right now? Mm-hmm. And bring it back to there. A lot of times that will kind of clear up the fog of the past and the future, wherever it was that you were. And from that, you can start making those choices. And that choice may simply be, finish listening to this podcast. That choice may be, go back and listen to prior podcasts. That choice may be, click on a link that somebody provided in one of those podcasts and learn that next new thing. Yeah. Or the choice could simply be, I'm going to go sit on the couch and do nothing for the next 10 minutes. Set a timer. It's really hard for some of us to do nothing for 10 minutes. I'm one of them. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. I will find something to go do. But that's something that,
while I do this thing, can I do nothing while I do this thing?
and that was one of the things I had to learn. And it's something that I tasked myself with over the last, year and a half or so of craziness, was learning how to just be and sit with myself and meditate. And so I found meditation tracks, and because I'm that person, I love guided meditation. I'm like, well, if I'm going to spend time meditating, I'm going to be doing something with that meditation time, and I'll do guided meditation, AKA hypnosis. But the concept of just sitting, I'm like, but I could be doing that.
That is literally one of the hardest things for me to do to this day as an action taker. And lately, I just got to jump in, because it's like you've just hit the nail on the head. Certainly for me, certainly I'm sure for somebody who's listening, the last year has literally said it is okay to not be doing and simply be being, which, trust me, as you're hearing for two of us that are well into personal development journey, we are still trying to figure out how to just be.
And if you don't take the hints to just be, sometimes universe smacks you upside the head. So I missed the first 2 weeks of August this year. They did not exist. I was asleep. Oh. We had such a crazy summer with back-to-back. I did a 2-week trainer's training. I was driving from Orange County all the way down to San Diego every day to teach, and then coming back, picking my kids up at dance, and then going home, getting up at the crack of dawn, going down teaching all day, coming to the office, waiting for them to get out. And I did that for 2.5 weeks. Got out of that, and then it was summer national season, and we did not one, but we did 3. And those 3 nationals were in 3 different states. So after what I thought was like 16 weeks of running around, no, all of that happened in 8 weeks. Literally came home from that final competition, butt hit the couch, and I could not get off the couch for 2 days. Finally mustered enough where I could drive my girls somewhere, but I couldn't even get out of the car. I would take naps in the car until they were ready to go back home. And for 2 weeks was laid out. And it was only within the last couple of weeks where I am not having to take naps, and I'm able to get back to the gym and working out and actually being awake all day. because I didn't. I had gotten into being so busy again. I had stopped taking the time to be, and universe hit me upside the head with a big old stick. So if this is your warning, take some time, because otherwise universe will give it to you whether you want it or not. It was rough.
Legit. Oh my God. I love that. That is just, I literally could spend hours just hanging out and talking to you, because I feel like some people talk about the personal development they do, and then there's some people who legitimately live it. And I know that for you, for me, certainly it's the same way. It was so easy. It was so easy to get back into being busy as soon as we had the opportunity to do so. And I could literally, it felt like my soul was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I thought we learned this. Didn't we learn this already? Yeah, no.
I think I learned it this time.
Look it up here. I'll make sure
attention
here. Right down to, one of the things that's hit me the most in the last year is I really leaned into, I guess 2 years now, because 2020 kind of, it was there, but it wasn't there. So the last 2 years has been the healing of the feminine for me, the fierce feminine. I had the sexual figured out. I had, I could be the siren, could be the bombshell, could turn a sail, had that figured out. But the softer, the fierce, so there was another side there that I had been literally exploring, whether it's to the backcountry camping, because I get out there and then it's like, okay, I have time to think and feel in a different way. But one of the things I realized is that I had such a hard time being both a powerful and present mother, which is something I've wanted my entire life. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I've wanted to be a very present, active, involved mom, right? So, but I also still have these dreams where I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I'd like to make a certain amount of money. I'd like to see a certain amount of success. I'd like to be involved in these conversations with these people I respect, but feel like they're my peers. And the question always was, well, how are you going to do all of that? And learning that it's like, yeah, but I'm fiercely feminine. So I can, I've given birth. I know what it feels like to hit the end of the tank. There's nothing left. And then you're like, no, there's still more in there. I don't know where it's coming from, but there's more. But the fact that I always built my businesses and built that side of my life from the masculine part of my body, which I want to, blend and marry rather than have them so divorced, which they were before. So this new life that's coming in, that's the next part of the journey for me, is not just learning how to sit and be still, which I know, a new baby's going to help me do. You must sit now and, focus on one other thing. But also, can I, as my businesses ramp back up, as the world opens up, right, as I shift and change, right, can I stay in the fierce feminine and build? While still being really grateful for the overdeveloped masculine side that I have, that's going to, be the support myself, like this whole support piece. And I know this is a whole nother topic for another podcast, but I wanted to bring it up because it feels important for people to know that when you're in this journey of personal development, it is like every day. You think you've got it figured out. That's exactly when you're going to get like another, wait a minute, let's think about this for a minute. But how powerful is that if you can learn to look at those things? And part of the personal development for me has been when I see that, I go, ooh, that's a rabbit hole. We should totally go down there and see what I might learn and who I'm going to be on the other side of that.
Absolutely. And I will say that you can, it's not the word balance. I hate the word balance, but there is a harmony that can be found. Right. And part of my harmony was, wait, I can get an office in the same building as the dance studio. Genius. Oh, wait, it's going to be big enough so that they can homeschool here and I can drag them to the office in the morning and they can get school done and I can get work done because I'm on the West Coast. And so if I don't start working till they go to dance, I'm starting at 6:00 Eastern.
Yep.
It's a really weird time for me to start going to work. So now I can shift all of that. And I think that's really what's needed. That's a big thing that's been missing in NLP. NLP has always been so masculine. And even the women within NLP were always very in their masculine. I'm a Cancerian female. I am also an Enneagram 8 though. So there's that, but
I'm a 2,
so in that, there is this really big shift to bringing in more of the feminine, bringing in the fact that, and that's what I love about virtual, when other people are like, oh, well, they should just find childcare. I'm sorry, but that's not why I had kids. I didn't have my kids to put them with a nanny all day while I go gallivant around the world. If that's what I wanted, I would not have had kids. For myself. I wanted to be a mom. What do you want to be when you grow up? A mom. What do you want to be when you grow up? A mom.
Yeah.
Now I get to be a mom. Oh no, I'm not going to do that right now. This window is short. And those of you that have littles, it may feel like it lasts a long time. I blinked and they are 9 and almost 14. I don't know when that happened, but I was so in the masculine of getting things done and being busy that now I'm taking that step back going, I'm on borrowed time right now.
Yep.
How can I be present with them and still go out and impact the world and have all of my dreams? And I got creative. I put my office next to a dance studio and put homeschool behind me. And there's going to be times where I'm teaching and my kids are going to be on camera doing work.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that because women are capable. We are capable of doing that, men as well, because how many dads also equally think that it's not okay to have the kids on camera. If it's part of your branding and part of your message, then do it. So even my friend who uses my office, I was like, oh, I won't have the girls put their artwork up because they want to put all their artwork up on their wall. And he was like, I'm all about family values. Decorate it, color it, don't care. It'll be on my camera and I don't care. And so, and that's coming from a guy. So I think that fierce feminine, I think part of that fierce feminine is teaching the masculine how to tap into it.
Oh, this is good. So I think all of my listeners know I'm going to have you back for another episode. Because, oh my goodness, and I cannot wait until, we're in a position and a place where we can actually connect. I've actually got a few podcast guests that, I can tell and see there'll be a summit or something in the future that I'll be like, listen, we need an excuse to hang.
Yeah.
We'll make sure it's warm. And, the kids can go and play and have a great time, and we'll do something so that we can, be present and share, these messages that matter so much to us and then get us up in the morning. And thank
Absolutely.
you so much,
Thank
Brenda.
you.
I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
And to my listeners, you know the drill. Like, share, love, comment. It means the world to those of us who are taking the time out to connect and communicate with you and share that with you online. And to the rest of you, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the flip side.